Most of you know Tina Campbell as a member of the Grammy Award-winning duo Mary Mary. Not only is she a powerhouse singer, she's also an author and joins us today to talk about her new book and the release of her solo album, It's Personal. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you.
Now, Tina, I refuse to shake your hand because the last time I shook your hand, I crushed it and you let me know that, listen, don't do that.
I'm sorry, I was probably rude. Was I rude?
No, you weren't. You weren't.
Wasn't rude.
You know, the interesting thing is, you yourself have said, you know, I'm the one that says loudmouth and being offensive to people. But actually, I've always found you to be forthright, is the word we'll use in London. And I'd rather have someone like that around me, so at least we know where we stand.
I like that term. I think that term is a little more suitable. I think people who have a very bold personality and are pretty confident just being who they are, they're not always perceived properly. And the truth is, I probably gave people reasons to perceive me wrong. Some of the reasons that people thought I had a big mouth and didn't like what I was saying, I probably was being offensive. You know, I haven't been perfect in my past. And so, you know, I didn't always use the gift that God gave me to speak, to communicate, basically for His glory. I didn't always use it that way. I'm using it that way now, so to God be the glory.
So you capture in your book, I Need a Day to Pray, some of your own personal confessions through your time of transition, which was well documented on your reality TV show.
Yeah.
And we all felt like we knew what was going on in your world.
Oh, you knew? Yeah, I gave y'all my real life on the show. My sister and I were very committed to showing our reality. We made sure we were executive producers. We made sure we had contracts that were fitting for what our needs were, and our needs was to tell the truth. If we're going to show our life, you know, we took our music and took it to spaces where there was no God and there was no Christianity there, and we basically took the cross over, even though, you know, many didn't agree with our style. That's the place that God placed us in, to take His music in non-Christian settings. So when it came time to do television, it wasn't a Christian show or anything like that. We were just really showing our lives. I was like, well, the same thing that we did with music, I guess we'll do that with the show, and just kind of show people what it looks like when you're not falling out, being slain in the spirit, and, you know, speaking in tongues and all that kind of stuff. What does everyday Christian living look like when you're doing regular human stuff, when you're negotiating deals, when you're juggling hectic schedules, when you're trying to manage the children and the relationship and being a professional and all of these things and being a minister. And so that's what our show did. And when devastation hit, I was like, you know what? I've never been a fake and a phony, and I told these people, not the public, but I was like, I signed up to show my real life, so I'm gonna show it. Now, I did not know that my life was going to be as devastating as it was. Like, I thought that I was in control of the situation. It's been a couple of situations. My husband's been unfaithful. I know about the situations. It's only been a couple, and they were far apart. It was a long time ago. I'm gonna move forward. While the TV show was on, I found out that it had just stopped when I found out, and that it had been going on for a very, very long time. And so I was more devastated, but I did show the truth.
But let me ask you though, sorry to interrupt, let me ask you, because looking through your book, you got the impression that prior to all hell breaking loose, as we call it, you actually had gone on a journey to seek God. You wanted to get to know Him more, get closer, and all of a sudden, Yeah, well, the thing is this. At the end of 2012, I was like, whatever version of Christianity this is that I have, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm more focused on the things that God has blessed me with than the God that has blessed me with them. It's like I have everything that I want, and I don't like any of it. Like, I have a good life, and I don't like my life. I love everybody in it, but they get on my nerves. Like, it's like I'm totally conflicted. Like, I felt like this is utter schizophrenia every day. I love and hate everything that's a part of my life. I was like, you know what? I'm confusing, and I'm not connected to my center, and I'm not connected to my God, so I'm going to do that. And I went on this fast, and I started praying this prayer, which was the beginning of that book. And I was like, I'm just going to seek God until I get this thing right. And in the middle of chasing God, the first 3 days into my prayer for Him to reveal Himself to me, it was revealed that my husband was unfaithful. I was like, God, this is not what I prayed for. I didn't pray for this kind of revelation. And needless to say, I was devastated. But in the process of, I lost my way for a little while, and I was like, you know, I'm done with God. I'm done with faith. It all failed me, and I'm leaving it all. And so I kind of started listening to the devil and kind of doing what he was telling me to do, all those voices. And when I ended up in a worse scenario, I was like, well, God, that didn't work, so here I am. I'm back. Help me. And He did. And I opened up the Bible, and I started praying, and I started adding to the prayer
which is now that book. And that's what I confessed over myself every day to get from that devastating point 2 years ago to get to a life of victory with a husband who's my best friend and my partner, who I prayed the prayer with, who I produced the record with, and we do everything together. And this was just 2 years ago that we were publicly devastated, and now we have a life of victory in front of the world. And so
now, I mean, the CD, it's personal. Again, you say those were songs for you.
Yeah.
These were songs the Holy Spirit gave you to sing to yourself, and it's come to the CD, which is out now. But let me ask you, generally, someone like you who's quite forthright, who speaks out, you really have low intolerance for injustice and equity not being done.
True.
And so how does that play out when you're in church and you see people going through what you'd gone through, and you think it's not fair how they're perceived? Because we look at people like you, think it should be right.
Yeah.
And if it's not right, you know, frown.
Yeah.
So injustice is boiling up inside of you. You want to speak, but you don't want to be misunderstood again.
Well, now I don't care what people think. I
But you've never cared what they think.
Well, you know what? I did care to some degree. I really don't care now, because I'm going to tell you why I cared before. I cared before because I cared about myself. Like, I was self-centered. When you are self-centered, when you are selfish, I don't care if it's like prideful in the way that you think more of yourself or you think too low of yourself. When you are self-centered, you do care about people because you want to make sure yourself doesn't look bad. I don't care if I look bad. I don't care if I look good. I don't care how I look. All I know is Jesus is my every single thing. He saved my life. He took my sorrow, my despair, and turned it into something amazing. He gave me a voice. He gave me hope in the future, like I say in that song. And so all I want to do for the rest of my life is shine for him. I don't want to take his glory. Yeah. Fortunately, he loves me enough to allow me to share in it, but I'm not trying to steal whatever he's not giving. I'm not trying to please anybody. I'm not trying to get anybody to support or align with me or, you know, back me or push me in any kind of way. I just want to use my voice on the platforms that God gives me to share my truth, because I was one of those people who I was one thing in theory, but when I got faced and challenged with it, I realized that I was just that. More of a theory.
Wow.
I was the theory of myself, but now I'm the reality of myself, and I'm grateful.
Now, Tina, our time is run out, and I wish we had so much more time, because we could have talked about your journey with your father and how he affected your life and going through all that, but, you know, we don't have time. But one question I have to ask you, we've run out of time, but I want to ask you this question. When you look back at it all, everything you went through, the marriage is restored, you know, you're going well, what one thing would you say, that's the biggest thing I learned through all this? Well,
what I would say is I'm so completely grateful to God for the pit that I was in, because in falling into that pit, I was able to finally receive the promises of God. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. To God be the glory.